Hello, my name is Nigel Ward. I'll be talking about interaction style. Interaction styles as they occur in dialogue, the different ways that people vary in how they speak, how they interact, and how we can model this. More specifically, I'll be reporting on an investigation on the dimensions of interaction style. What is the space of interaction and how can we model that? The study of interaction style goes back about 40 years to Deborah Tannen. She moved from New York to Berkeley, Northern California, and observed differences. Stereotypically, Californians seem laid back and uninterested. New Yorkers seem domineering and aggressive. Tannen went beyond that. So she gathered data at a dinner party, in fact, and looked in detail at what the people were doing that gave these impressions of style. So for example, for the New Yorkers, she observed short switching pauses. People tend to talk over each other, or at least leave very little space between turns. They tend to use overstatement, exaggeration for effect, talk more about personal matters, higher speaking rate, and a few other factors. So these things tended to correlate, and together they gave sort of the impression of a New York style interaction style. Okay, other people have done similar work looking at different demographics and age groups and all sorts of things, looking at the components of interaction styles. So there's a lot of good descriptive work. However, that work has not been systematized. There is no overall model of the space of variation in interaction styles. Such a model would be nice to have for several practical reasons. We might imagine a model like the Big Five model of personality. Although people vary almost infinitely in personality, if you can just pin them down on 5 dimensions, quantify how agreeable they are or disagreeable, how introverted or extroverted they are, if you can take those 5 measurements, that gives you a good descriptive model that's actually predictive for a lot of human behavior. Previous research, so as I mentioned, there's been a lot of descriptive research. Tannen, for example, distilled down some of her work into a distinction between high contact, like New Yorker style or Greek style, and high consideration, like California style. Doug Bieber, who did the first systematic analysis based on data, identified 3 dimensions of style. The first one, information focused, sort of like the conversation you might have at work, focusing on the facts, versus a more interactive, personal style, and a few others. Which is good, but surely only 3 dimensions is not enough. We have a huge folk vocabulary for talking about aspects of style. So I think there's going to be more dimensions. And to investigate, we used a data-driven method. So we started with far more data and far more features than any previous study, 32,000 conversational fragments from American English telephone dialogues, computed over those prosodic features. So prosody is interesting because it conveys a lot about turn-taking intentions, attitude, interpersonal stances, activities, topic structure. So you can get a lot just from the prosody. So we computed those features. We threw them all into principal component analysis, which is just a way for discovering the underlying factors that explain the surface variation. And that gave us the principal components, or dimensions. From those dimensions, there was a short interpretation process, which I'll lead you through, and that led to the model that I'll be describing. Apologies for the messy slide, but what this shows is the loadings over those features for interaction style dimension 3. If you look at the ovals, so the ovals say that this dimension relates to having a lot of silences, having a lot of overlap, and use of the bipartite construction. So the bipartite construction it's kind of like a colon or a long dash in many cases. It's used for different functions, but in this context, it's often used to show negativity. And let's listen to an example.
And we pick up a local paper. We're really shocked, even in a major city, at how local it is. It's really provincial.
It is the same way. The local news here is Generality.
Okay, so these people are expressing a negative opinion, and you can hear that not just in the words that they're choosing and their tone of voice, but in the style of the interaction, how they pause, when they overlap. Now, you all knew, of course, that negativity is something that people express in dialogue, but the fact that there's a specific aspect of style here with specific structural and prosodic features, maybe that's new.
And we pick
All right, so this shows some of the lexical tendencies. So it's not just about prosody. Certain words are more common, certain topics are more common. Overall, it does relate to negativity. There's a lot of convergent evidence.
All of a sudden they want every so often my husband and
On the other side, so each dimension is really a dimension with a positive side and a negative side. On the other side here, shown in pink, the lexical tendencies are towards more down-to-earth, positive words. The topics are about positive things, and here's an example.
all of a sudden they want everything typed. Till now everything's been handwritten, so it's a good thing that the computer was back up and running. Hook the printer up to it.
I was going to say, you must have a printer then.
Right.
Okay, it's a crazy little example of a conversation, but you can hear the positivity, right? They're positive about the topic, the experience, the story, about the person they're talking to. It's just pouring through, and it's not just the words, but it's the interaction style.
All of a sudden they want everything.
Okay, so we've identified one dimension of interaction style, positive versus negative. This actually explains about 8% of the variance, so it's kind of a big deal. Together, the 8 that I'm showing you here explain 53% of the variance. So, interaction styles are complicated, but we can put some structure on them. Another dimension is that of engagement. Is there a lot of engagement or not much at all? That one's pretty obvious. Another dimension of style variation relates to knowledgeability. So often in conversation, one person knows more than the other or has more authority about a topic, and the other person will acknowledge that in some way. That's shown very clearly again in the prosody and word choice. So that's all another dimension of style. Another dimension relates to the difference between a factual interaction style and a speculative interaction style. Again, these are things that both people engage in together. There are several more. If there was time, I would go through these. I would also talk about how these relate to gender and population. So you can do a simple analysis. Now that we've mapped out the space of interaction styles, we can look at how women and men behave differently. But there's no time for that, unfortunately. Well, that went kind of quickly. This is actually a journal article in preparation, which I'm happy to send to anybody. But the bottom line is that interaction styles are pretty interesting. There is certainly a lot of variation in interaction styles, more than I think most people probably ever thought, but it really is systematic. There's 8 dimensions that explain a lot of what's going on. That's it. I welcome your comments.